Hi everyone, hope everyone's doing well. I'm Bakhtawar. I do book reviews and bookcasts. Today I'm doing a really short review of the Sellout by Paul Beatty, who is an African-American author. He also won the Man Booker Prize in 2016, I believe. Now, fun fact, I don't actually agree with all of the Man Booker Prize winner choices, but with this one I agree about 80-85%. So the Sellout was a story of a young black man who sort of throughout the novel carries out this satirical commentary on the class discrimination and racism that blacks still face. I think everyone is aware of the George Floyd incident, which has caused global outrage. So in fact, Paul Beatty commented on a critic's positive review that, people are overtly focusing on all the things that are funny so that they don't have to look at the other sort of more real and harrowing themes in the novel, and sort of the harsh realities of the treatment of blacks, which really starts on the subliminal and kind of emotional level when you sort of stereotype someone's IQ or assume that they're a low IQ person simply because they belong to a certain race. Now, the narrator, who in some places is just referred to as the Sellout, has this really unusual history because he was homeschooled by his father, who was, for all intents and purposes, mad because he was the self-proclaimed social researcher and psychologist and used to do these really abusive and painful psychological experiments, such as shocking his son with electric currents in order to elicit certain responses, the sort that you would do in a rat study. So he sort of grew up in this really strange and abusive environment, and then obviously he belongs to this really dirt poor town called Dickens that the government actually takes right off the map because they sort of merge it with a nearby locality. So it's kind of, they almost erase it kind of about I would say maybe 50-60 pages in. So anyway, his father kind of early on gets killed in a police shootout, and even though he hated his father, it kind of creates all of these ideas inside him, gives him this new feeling of self-realization that he never really even had before, actually, because he thought that all his father was researching and, writing was complete nonsense anyway. So when his father, gets killed, the narrator kind of has, not really a breakdown, more like a breakthrough, if you will, because then what he does next is he re-demarcates the town and puts up like billboards and everything and says that this town is still there, and he also keeps a slave who is actually just this mentally challenged neighbor of his who had tried to kill himself, and this guy had rescued him. So that's a really funny story. You need to read it to get it. So in many ways it's like, he's preventing the disappearance of his identity, what he construes to be his identity, because his whole life the identity has been the father and the father's choices, and now he's gone, and then it's also been the town that he lives in because this guy has no exposure at all. So it's like, if these two things disappear, how can you live with yourself? So the prose is very specific. It's like someone having a very deranged, one-sided conversation with you. Of course it's hilarious, even if you're someone that doesn't have that much knowledge of racism, the way that it still prevails in America, or the way, even if you've never actually even read any kind of black literature before and this is your first one, it's still, it kind of really relates on a really human level, and it's very effective. And the narrator, funnily enough, he's one of those really interesting people, one of those classic narcissists, that obviously start from a place of pure self-loathing, and eventually they go on to believe that they have some really significant role to play in the world, and that they have the power to change their own lives and the lives of other people. And in some ways the narrator is kind of Stockholm Syndrome-ish. He hated his father, but still it's kind of that ideology that someone sort of belongs to you in a specific way, such as a parent, that even if you hate them, you want the exclusive rights to be able to hurt them. You're still not willing to let someone else hurt them. So that's what he sort of gathers from the police shootout that happens and the way his father dies, sort of gunned down like a dog, more or less. That's the way he describes it. The question of identity, the greater question of identity, is one that really pops up in the novel a lot. There's this really funny pseudo-intellectual character in the novel who among other stupid things, all he does is he picks out like really classic American novels, sort of things like The Great Gatsby and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, stuff like that, and what he does is he rewrites them so that they have like kind of black characters. So it's also, in a way, it's kind of like you're reframing the narrative of who you consider to be the perpetrators in your life, people who are in some way controlling you and thinking that they're superior to you. You're sort of reframing their narrative to craft your own identity, but is that something that's possible? And the narrator, he often in different parts of the novel, he's like, you know, what if all that the black people in America need is, all that they need is a motto, and that's what would he, like, obviously he's a kid, right? I mean, he's a kid, so he doesn't really know what's going to cause great and significant social change. So he's got all these half-baked ideas in his head. What he does out of it's sort of an act of self-preservation, because whatever he sort of connects with his identity really is disappearing around him, and it's an act to stop himself from disappearing. Maybe that's why he keeps a slave, because obviously keeping slaves, as you might know, is completely illegal. So, he gets arrested for that, but that's a whole other story. No spoilers. What I found while reading it is that although the themes are executed wonderfully and everything, the storyline does get a little slow after sort of the first half and everything. It gets really slow for a while, so I sort of struggled with that bit. But then it picks up, but it's always entertaining. It's pretty top notch. But yeah, I mean, I would have liked it better had it maybe even been shorter, because it really didn't need the kind of length that it is at. But is it just me that feels that many novels would actually have been better if they were slightly shorter, because everything that the writer wants to say, they kind of end up saying in the first half, or even in less, and then the rest is they sort of drag it on so that it's a respectable length. But anyway, in this novel, you don't really mind that. So the lockdown is ongoing. Order yourself a copy. Give it a read. It's obviously on Bookstagram I've seen a lot of posts. Everybody is posting and making videos about black literature and really classics and everything. So this is a bit of a, well, I wouldn't call it a modern classic, but it's well on its way to being one. Maybe 20 years from now or something. It's a brilliant read. Give it a read. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for having taken the time to watch. I appreciate it.